Hi, I'm Simon Hanna, and this is the timeline of my musical journey. The beginning. I was about to say career originally. What the heck. But picture this for a moment. Like, kid born in the early 90s and goes across to has many visits with his extended family and play a lot of Egyptian instruments around the house, and that sort of became the backbone for that, as well as the fact that his father plays instruments around the house as a hobby, from guitar to the clarinet to flute to violin to the didgeridoo. So that really became sort of the backbone for my start as a musician and stuff. But years later, and actually from particularly with the drums, like was climbing up onto a drum kit at a wedding, started playing on it before the wedding band kicked him off. And then to discover, like, really fully get into music and drums until around 20 years ago, 2006, when I was 13 or 14 years old. And particularly got that started from after having seen Michael Jackson's Billie Jean and the Motown performance. They're sort of inspiring me to go towards that part of my life as well, and also years later adding Stevie Wonder and John Mayer to my list of musical influences. But really, from a drumming perspective, really kind of got started from having seen what was it? Oh, that's right. Animal and Buddy Rich, I think, on The Muppet Show, the famous drum battle from The Muppet Show, that kind of really got started the drumming side of things, as well as watching Andy Stratton from The Living End. So The Living End also becoming sort of the projectile, so to speak, in my musical journey and stuff. So I went on to do music when I was in high school and was taking drum lessons from a teacher named Greg Rowan, amazing drum teacher, an amazing musician, an amazing human being, and ran into him actually at a 2-day masterclass with Todd Suckerman from Styx, and pointed out on the fact that it's been 20 years since it all started for me. So it was kind of a bit of a full circle moment with me being a teacher myself and a musician, and him and I still being there as like fellow students and stuff, and saying, just because like we're like in teaching, we're in music, doesn't mean we're not students at the end of the day. We're still learning and growing so much over this incredible industry, incredible field and stuff, especially with an industry that is ever changing on the regular and stuff, and still so much to learn and everything. And I think that's important to hold on to. So I had Greg Rowan as my drum teacher for about a year, then went to Mark Rundon for most of my high school years up until around senior year, which was year 11 or year 12. And I had an amazing teacher, amazing musician, amazing person, and also had my first experience in percussion ensemble, particularly Brazilian percussion. And then cut to around my senior years, I was taught by Peter Robinson, or Robbo as he likes to be called, where I had experience with drumline, as well as the drum lessons from that, and playing in groups during that time as well. So, which was absolutely fantastic, which of course would lead directly into what's called the EKC drumline. It gave me a really good insight into drumline playing and stuff, but it wasn't necessarily in that sort of very strict kind of drumline, like rigid sort of hand approach. Everything was kind of very loose and stuff, and it was mostly from just watching all the other drummers on the lineup and stuff, and just watching what everyone was doing. So I was really focusing a lot during that time, and just like, it's that whole thing of just like shut your mouth, open your ears and your eyes thing. And that was so much fun doing that drumline, because we had a lot of amazing experiences with that, from performing at the Hamer Hall Arts Centre in Victoria as part of a program that was focusing a lot on schools across Victoria, particularly with very strong music programs, and performing at the Clock Tower in Moonee Ponds and stuff. So that, not only from the drumline perspective, but also incorporating percussion, and particularly Brazilian percussion, into like the sets and stuff, which was absolutely amazing. And the many teachers and mentors I had over the years, particularly James Rust, or Rusty as he likes to be called, amazing musician, amazing teacher, director, just a person all around and stuff. I really owe a lot to those guys for like push towards that journey and helping like add more to my repertoire, so to speak, as well as for the many musicians that I would know down the line from a music scene perspective. And especially during the times when I was like during the drumline stuff, when Robbo was not able to do like certain rehearsals and stuff, I was able to step up and just lead the group. It showed to me that it's like, wow, I didn't realize I had these leadership qualities in me. So it's kind of that amazing thing where you discover something about yourself that you didn't know you had. Salt Lake City, Melbourne edition. So going into my university years or college years, when I went to do my Bachelor's of Music at Melbourne Polytechnic, or what used to be called NMIT before they changed the name, don't ask me why that is. I was studying under Ronnie Farella for the first 2 years of my degree, and then under Tony Floyd in my final year and stuff, who was, both of them are absolutely amazing, but Floyd was really the one that really showcased to me what it means to be a musician and what it means to be a person. It's like, definitely have to be well-rounded, and also just be a kind, nice, humble human being, because in this business, it's like, I think as Todd Suckerman once said, it's a people business, and people want to work with their friends. You have to get out there and make friends. If no one wants to hear you, it's not going to matter. But if you're someone that no one wants to hang around with, your talent isn't going to matter either. Be humble and be real. But going back onto like Salt Lake City and stuff, that came about during my second year. I think it was my second year of university. When I still remember when one of my lecturers at the time, Greg Arnold, said to me, who was the lead singer for Things of Stone and Wood, as was Tony Floyd, or Floydie was part of, and still is to this day, playing in that group. He said to me, as like directly from like a lecturer to a first year student, that second year is even worse than first or third year. And for a lecturer to say that to a first year student, that is terrifying. He wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong about that. But particularly going back to Salt Lake City, I was playing in a lot of different like ensembles around that stage, from having mentors from Darren Ferrugia, who would go on to continue to be one of my mentors and a really good friend of mine, as is Floydie, as is Ronnie, and of course knowing Jerry Pentazes, and his brother Jack Pentazes, who's an amazing guitarist, and Jerry being an amazing drummer in and of itself. And of course having where I was working in like the rock ensemble, to the Brazilian choir, to South Indian vocals, South Indian rhythm, and all that kind of stuff. I was very much unfamiliar with the music scene at that stage. And then I got asked by the leader of Salt Lake City, Vivian, to like, hey, are you able to do some gigs for like drums for a couple of our gigs? I said, yeah, I can. My first gig with her with Salt Lake City was at Open Studio in Northcote, which is no longer around, of course. Fantastic venue, and I was using my little drum kit that you see right behind me, but this is around the time before I modified it into a smaller drum kit. So that was a really fun experience. And then later at the Wesley Ann in Northcote, which is an amazing venue, I had so much fun like playing with Salt Lake City, and that again really gave me an insight into knowing what it's like to playing in an originals group and stuff, and sort of putting my own sort of blueprint into like especially originals work and stuff, where it's like, all right, it's now getting the creative brain happening, and like trusting your instinct, trusting your judgment, listening to what the leader has to say, and also doing what they're after in terms of the music, but also being very instinctive as well, and trusting your own judgment and listening to each other at the same time. I had so much fun doing that, as I did with all the other like musical experiences I had during my uni years and stuff. So I'm pretty grateful to everyone at Melbourne Polytechnic for that, from Adam Starr to Adrian Sheriff to Jonathan Diamond to Tony Floyd to Floydie to Ronnie to all these guys, for everything they've done, and for setting on that path. Everyone at the course, just for everything they've done. So it's absolutely fantastic. The vignettes. After my years at Melbourne Polytechnic, which was a 3-year course from 2012 to 2015? Yeah, that's right. And after having played with like a variety of musicians in the scene, just jamming with people, doing a couple of recording sessions and stuff, particularly with Pat Bruce on his song World of Shame, and my first real band experience kind of happened actually at the same time I was studying to be a teacher, from the vignettes when I posted onto social media music groups like saying, hey, I'm a drummer, I'm looking for a band to play in and all that kind of stuff. And Sam Black, amazing musician, amazing guitarist, and to this day an amazing human being, and one of the great friends that I have in this business and stuff, had reached out and said, hey son, we'd like to play with you. He sent me across one of the songs. I listened to it just like constantly, which is how I approach like a lot of how I've always approached like learning a lot of music and stuff, whether it's been originals to covers and stuff. I could easily transcribe it if I wanted to, but to me, I've always preferred kind of like the listening kind of approach and stuff, and getting the sense of what's happening with the drums and keeping it in the spirit of the original recording, but also at the same time putting my own identity onto like tracks and stuff, whether it's like covers to original kind of stuff. Anyway, and I jammed with like Sam and with Roy, the lead singer, fantastic singer-songwriter, really good human being, and then eventually would add Cheyenne as a bass player to the group. Amazing bassist, amazing human being, and a great sound engineer as well. And from that first rehearsal or first jam together, we hit it off instantly, and we did so many amazing gigs together, especially with a lot of bands and stuff that I would know down the track, or have known from back in my high school years, and then I've known back in my uni years and stuff, from writing mine to Zuma with Alex Latham on vocals, one of the best vocalists to ever come out of Australia, as far as I'm concerned. And you know, and also with Creek as well, who I knew back in my uni years and stuff. Amazing band, one of the best blues rock bands to ever come out of Melbourne. And honestly, just like with all the other artists the local artists that I'm mentioning about like today and stuff, and beyond that, deserve to be up there on the bigger Australian stage, if not the world stage for that matter. So it was so much fun like playing alongside those guys, and the Vignettes was like my first real band experience. So that really gave me more insight into the local scene of Melbourne and understanding the music business in and of itself. And if you ever decided, hey Simon, let's get to playing together, I'd be there in a heartbeat. Chris and the Alchemaholics. After my time with the Vignettes, I was playing with a couple of other groups at the time that didn't really head anywhere, and also with my own jazz quartet that had formed under the Hamner Quartet, with Sean Reed on guitar, Madeline Crofson on vocals, one of the best vocalists that I've ever heard in my life, and Sean being an amazing guitarist, and Costa Hagi, an amazing musician and bassist that I knew back in my uni years and stuff. I was taking a bit of a break at that stage, or that was during the time when I was feeling very disillusioned with the music industry in and of itself. So I was needing to take a bit of a break to sort of find myself as a musician again, but also find myself as a person as well, sort of rediscover and reconnect with myself on a personal level and stuff. And yeah, know who I was outside of like music, outside of teaching and all that kind of stuff. And then Chris and the Alchemaholics happened, where I knew Chris from back in the open mic days, as did Tim, as did Daniel Orzar Green, as did Emily Day, all amazing musicians in their own right. And we ended up getting to play together at the Mr. Boogeyman Bar in Abbotsford and stuff, which was an amazing gig. And you know, Chris is such an amazing singer-songwriter, and it's that very Blink-182 acoustic punk kind of atmosphere and stuff. And it's like, Tim is one of the best guitar players on the planet, Emily Day is an amazing musician, Daniel is an amazing musician, singer-songwriter, and to this day, these guys are still great friends of mine. And it's like, that was, again, that really kind of opened the doors up to me. When I look back on the videos from that gig and stuff, it's like, amazing. And that reminded me so much of an interview that I heard from Floydie, or Tony Floyd, however you want to think about him, from a podcast that he did, where he has the following criteria that he follows as a musician, which is, number one, the chemistry has to be there from a musical and a non-musical perspective. Number two, the music has to be there. And thirdly, the money has to be there as well. And that's kind of like the criteria that I've always followed without even realizing it, but then discovered years later, oh, okay, I actually follow that same criteria and stuff when I heard that from Floydie and stuff. So, and if 2 out of the 3 are hit, particularly the chemistry and the music, that's great. If all 3 are hit, perfect. But if only 1 out of the 3 is hit, it ain't worth it. And with Chris and the Alcoholics, the music and the chemistry absolutely were there, and a bit of the money was there as well. But I had so much fun playing with those guys. And if Chris said to me, hey son, would you be interested in playing drums with us for a gig, or like touring with, I don't know, Blink-182, I'd be there in a heartbeat. Fennec. So during a time when I was playing with jazz fusion group Secondhand Smoke, and with Silt at the time, that was also during the time before going on to Fennec, when I was really starting to question what did I really want out of being a musician and stuff, and what was I getting the most out of from a musical perspective as well as fulfillment perspective. Like, was I getting it out of being a bandmate in like this group, or was I getting it out of more being a freelance musician or a session musician or a hired gun, depending on however you want to think about it, of course. And to me, I thought back to when I was doing a recording session with Oscar James for his EP at the time, back in 2019, and I got the physical copy for the EP and stuff, which is basically like a mini album or a precursor to an album, and saw my name listed in the credits with drums attached to it. I was like, this is what I was meant to do. So after that, and especially when the lockdown happened and everything, I took a bit of a step back from music, just to kind of again focus on myself and just being there for my family and stuff. And while I was doing online session stuff as well, hence by the bigger drum kit and small drum kit and the recording setup that you see around here. So the lockdown sort of gave me an excuse to go down a path that I've wanted to go down for a long time and stuff. How Fennec came to be and stuff was I knew Josh and James, Josh Beadle, James McGrath, one of the best guitar players on the planet. And I'm not just saying that, I really do mean that about him. And Josh Beadle being one of the best singer-songwriters that I know, and amazing human beings and stuff. I'd known those guys for years. I did recording with them like that same year, 2019, and then cut to 2020 was I got offered to be part of the group twice. The first time I had to turn it down because I was playing with Chris Alcoma at the time, but I was also focusing a lot on being a session musician. And then after the lockdown ended, I got a second offer to play with them, just saying, hey, we've got this gig coming up, would you be interested in playing with us? Got my little drum kit set up at the venue, and that was the first time all three of us had ever really played together. And it was in that moment, and that was the sound check. And after the sound check had ended, I asked them straight up, is the offer still available to join your group? And I said, I'd love to be part of it. And the rest was basically history from there. And we played like as a three-piece for the next couple of years, playing alongside Odie Room Project, who I would go on to play drums with for one of their gigs and stuff, and who would eventually have one of our members in TJ, our keyboardist, one of the best keyboard players and one of the best musicians I know, and an amazing human being and stuff. And like Odie Room Project being an amazing duo. Like Ellie is such a fantastic vocalist, one of the best I've ever heard. And TJ, as I've spoken about before, amazing. And we got to play alongside a whole range of like acts in the local scene and stuff. And then we added Luke Shembry, our bass player, one of the best bass players I know, an amazing human being. The start of 2022, and then at the end of 2022, added TJ to the group, and we've been a five-piece during that time and stuff. It was, and the thing about with Fennec's music was in that very sort of indie folk country atmosphere, that very crowded house, boy and bear kind of atmosphere and stuff, which was right up my alley and everything. So it got me the chance to not just use sticks, but also use brushes in that sense. Again, going back to that whole crowded house reference, like with Paul Hester, like playing the drum, like drumming in crowded house with the brushes and sticks, Elroy Finn later doing the same thing, and Matt Sheroyd. So it gave me a chance to sort of explore that avenue and stuff, which was so much fun. And I still consider those guys my bandmates. I still consider them my brothers in arms. And like, hey, if Josh was to suddenly wake up, or any of the members would say, hey, so we're putting Fennec back together, and we're playing with Crowded House, or we're playing with Boy and Bear, would you be interested? I'd be there first thing Monday morning. Duxie Franklin. How Duxie Franklin sort of came about and stuff was, I was playing with Fennec at the time, or she was supporting us during one of the first gigs that we did, And I came up to her as any musician does with networking and all that kind of stuff. And it's like we just got to chatting a little bit. I gave her my business card, which are they still a thing? I'm just gonna say they are. Well, I still use them anyway. And she said that she was looking for a drummer to form like a band and stuff. So she added me to the group, and then James became part of that group and stuff. And then she added Gordon Gunn on bass, one of the best bass players I know. Amazing musician, an amazing guy who was notable for his work with John Farnham to Daryl Braithwaite to Kylie Minogue and a whole range of acts. I had so much fun playing with those guys. You know, Duxie is an amazing singer-songwriter, amazing musician, and an incredible human being. And like, I had so much fun playing with those guys. And I love the fact in like how eclectic her music was, in that it can go from like rocking to 1 minute to like jazz ballady the next, but there was still a sense of her identity attached to like each one of those songs that she had done and stuff. So you could still get that sense of who she is as an artist, even though she was spreading it across, adding like all these different elements to it and stuff. So it really pushed me and challenged me from a drumming perspective. But even though I was familiar with like a lot of that stuff, but there was some stuff in there that was definitely challenged me, which I'm always up for that. So I had so much fun working on that, and great guys, great musicians, and I would love to play alongside them again one day. And if Duxie ever said, "Hey, would you be interested in filling in for me on drums?" You know, I'd be there in a heartbeat. Andy Fillmore. How Andy Fillmore sort of came about and stuff was a really interesting one. Was Fennec had got into doing a gig with Andy at the time, and Andy had saw like my band playing and stuff because he was supporting us at the time, and he reached out and said, "Hey, son, would you be interested in drumming?" Of course. And I recommended to him a bass player at the time, again, Gordon Gunn. And from there, it was like Andy's kind of stuff was like, had that, where I was listening back on the recording from Andy's sort of stuff, and again was going from that very indie folk sort of atmosphere, from that very crowded house kind of atmosphere, as well as, but also Beatles kind of influences and stuff, which you could really hear in his music and everything. And it's been so much fun playing with Andy. I have so much fun every time we play together and stuff. And it really also allowed me to sort of kind of put in my own sort of blueprint to songs that he just brought to the table and stuff. So as I said, going back earlier with that whole trusting, being very instinctive, listening and trusting your own judgment, that's been an example of those kind of things. And also Andy having a very strong idea for what he wants the music to sound like and stuff. It truly is amazing. So he's a great musician, a great singer-songwriter, really great human being, and I can't wait to see what happens with him next. Mark Gardner. I'd known Mark for a really, really long time, and he actually reached out to me saying that hey son, would you be interested in like filling in for drums or playing drums at this one gig we've got coming up? I said, yeah, man. I got to know Mark, I got to know Stephen, I got to know Darren Horton on saxophone, Darren Headley on bass, all great musicians, really good friends of mine and stuff. And it's like, and that first gig was oddly enough at In Pit Lane for Channel 31. It was really a lot of fun playing that gig, and during that one was like, we also got to play a little bit on the spot and stuff. So that was really kind of training me in that sense of like, not just playing to what was rehearsed, but also like bringing stuff like happening in the spot and stuff, and just like, and again going back to the instinctive and trusting your judgment and listening and all that kind of stuff. It kind of put those skills to the test and stuff, especially coming from having played in jazz ensembles and like all the ensembles back at university that required like playing on the spot and all that kind of stuff, and also listening to a lot of music as well. It's like, yep, I know what to do, and that kind of thing. It's been so much fun. And you know, Mark is an amazing singer-songwriter, an amazing musician, and all the guys, fantastic musicians and great human beings as well. From the many gigs that we did together, particularly playing at the Army base as well, which was one of the best gigs I ever did in my life. And I'd be able to play with them again in a heartbeat if the opportunity arose. Arthur Gunn. Arthur Gunn was a really interesting one. I reached out to the It was actually from a post on social media at the time that was saying, hey, we're looking for a drummer, we're looking for an instrumentalist to play with American Idol singer Arthur Gunn. I looked up a little bit about this guy because the way the post was talking about it seemed like it was a big deal at the time. And I looked him up and was like, oh, okay, this guy definitely is an American Idol finalist. And going as so far as to get such praise from Lionel Richie, it was like, all right, I need to play with this guy. I reached out to them and said, hi, I'm interested in playing drums. And they said, fantastic. Do you know of like a bass player or saxophonist? I said, I know who to contact. Went straight to Gordon Gunn, and I went straight to Darren Corton from my time with Mark Gardner and stuff. I said, would you guys be interested? And they said, yep. And asked them and only had 2 days to prepare for that. I asked them in advance, can you give me the list of songs and everything? That way I can listen to it, and do the same for Darren and for Gordon in particular. And we only had 2 days rehearsal to prepare for that one. First rehearsal was just myself, Arthur, and Darren on saxophone. Gordon wasn't able to come to that one due to other musical commitments at the time, but there we were, and his entire team was around us, watching this rehearsal go down, seeing if it's going to work. And with a gig like that, it's like, especially with someone that's got such praise like that, it's like you have to treat this gig like it's the biggest gig of your life. It's like to use it's like a cricket ball coming straight towards you, and like you have to hit it out of the park now. Anything less than that is unacceptable. And that first rehearsal, we hit it off instantly. And the rest of the team was just like breathing a sigh of relief and just watching in amazement, just going like, wow, like amazing. And the second rehearsal, which was the day of the gig with Arthur, was with Gordon, myself, and Arthur there. And then we got to doing the gig and stuff, and we played to about 1,000 people that night at Billboards on Russell Street. One of the best gigs I ever did in my life. And Arthur is such an amazing musician, an amazing human being from the time I got to know him, and including the other musicians that were around us as well, from the different bands that were playing alongside us and stuff. It was so much fun. And if Arthur ever came back to Melbourne and said, hey Simon, would you be interested in playing drums for me again? I'd be there in a heartbeat. Man Called Sun. How Man Called Sun kind of came about and stuff was, again, going back to like social media and stuff, which by the way, for networking purposes and all that kind of stuff, is like, you have to be very much in the middle when it comes to networking, all that kind of stuff, is going to gigs and talking to people, and also using technology and social media to your advantage. Not suggesting like AI or anything like that, definitely not suggesting that, but adapting to how much the industry is currently changing and stuff. So using technology, using social media to your advantage and stuff, and not neglecting one side over the other. So that's the way it works. So with Man Called Sun, Simon Perlman, I think either he reached out to me, or I might have reached out to him at one stage, saying, hey, would you be interested in playing drums and stuff? And Simon, being like a drummer himself, another session drummer like myself, understood exactly what he wanted in terms of the drums and his music and stuff, because he played everything himself and recorded everything himself in his own home studio. So he would have a strong idea for what he wanted the music to sound like, but also at the same time was open to other people's ideas and stuff. And that first rehearsal, we just hit it off instantly. Again, that very Beatles crowded house kind of vibe and stuff. And Simon being into Australian music and stuff, and like knowing the music industry quite a lot from the years of experiences he's had, but also knowing how much it's changing like regularly and stuff. He and I just hit it off instantly, as did with Sam, as did with Steph on bass. Sam being an amazing guitarist and Steph being an amazing bass player. We hit it off kind of instantly, and it was really fun for me to sort of give off my own sort of input in terms of what I think needed to be brought to the music, not just in terms of the drumming, but also in terms of the backing vocals and stuff. So it was really fun to do that in that sense, in that very collaborative kind of process and stuff. And I have so much fun every time I play with those guys. Cat Greta was a bit of an interesting one, actually. I think I messaged out to Kat at one stage, like a number of years back or something, and it was actually her bass player at the time, Gypsy, who reached out to me and said, "Hey Simon, there's a singer named Kat Greta who'd like to play with you and stuff. Would you be interested?" I said, "Yeah." Kat is an amazing singer-songwriter, amazing musician, an incredible human being, and Van, an amazing guitarist, Gypsy, fantastic bass player and stuff. And that first gig and everything, and that first rehearsal together, we were playing through Kat's original stuff. We did a couple of covers. It's been so much fun playing with Crad. And I also love the fact as well that she definitely put on like a show when it came to her music and stuff, in that she was all about like bringing down like different percussion instruments, from like snare drum, like from the marching drum, which brought me back to my drumline days, having a drum kit set up, or part of it set up, with her keyboard set on the top, so that she and I could swap back and forth, with me playing the drum kit like I'm a percussionist, and she'd be up on my drum kit like playing drums and stuff and singing at the same time. So it was really kind of fun to sort of go into those different sort of escapades and stuff, if that's even the right word for it. But it's been so much fun. It was so much fun playing with Kat during that time, and especially getting to play with her again this year, because it had been about like 3 years since we last played together. And this year when we did the rehearsal and stuff, we just got back into it. I knew the material like years later and stuff, having a pretty strong memory and stuff. Helps, maybe genetics help a little bit, but doing a lot of crosswords and a lot of word searches. But also have the songs there just in case. That way I can listen back to it if I need to. It always is so much fun playing with Kat, and I'd be there in a heartbeat to play with her again if she was touring, whether it was like just one gig off somewhere, or just like if she was doing a tour somewhere, or like saying, "Hey, Simon Jet wants us to support us," or "Hey, Miley Cyrus wants us to support us. Would you be interested in playing drums with me?" Absolutely. Celeste Kate. Celeste was, how that one ended up coming about was, I think I reached out to Celeste at one stage during that time, or actually Celeste told me the story about this one, where she spotted my profile on social media and saw the picture of me singing at the, like having the microphone next to me, like looking like I was about to eat it, or in my case it was actually singing and playing drums at the same time. It's like, this guy definitely speaks professional, let's reach out to him. And we just hit it off pretty much instantly from like that first rehearsal and stuff. Again, with Celeste in that very kind of Kate Bush type of atmosphere and stuff. So I began to listen to a lot of Kate Bush's work. I think before Stranger Things like brought her success, or brought her up to the forefront from not just from a musical perspective, but from a pop culture perspective. So depends where you've heard Kate Bush from. So I began to listen to a bit of Kate Bush's work to get a sense of Celeste's music, but also listening to her music as well, especially focusing on stuff that didn't have drums attached to it. I was like, all right, what can I put into this? And we began to work at it during rehearsal, and Celeste was just like, boom, that's it. I know that's exactly what I want for that song. And we just started playing together, and we just hit it off instantly. I have so much fun with playing with Celeste. With Celeste on keys and vocals, to the many musicians she has on stage with her, including John, her partner, on bass, who's a phenomenal bass player and amazing human beings and stuff. I have so much fun every time I play with them. Shani Wise. So during around that time when I was playing with Beck Jean, who I would know back from the open mic days, and get to record on one of her songs and play on her single launch, which featured myself on drums, TJ on keys, Sonia on bass, and her on vocals and guitar, and also knew her from our time from playing alongside Fennec and all that kind of stuff, as well as playing with George Last, who would eventually go to play bass with myself and Andy on I think it was his single launch or his album launch at the time. It was how Shani ended up coming about and stuff was Fennec was on the radio show called In Spotlight Melbourne, which was a fantastic radio show. I highly recommend checking it out. And she had a whole list of artists that we knew from around the local scene and stuff, whether it's been Celeste Kate to Andy Fillmore, to Simon Perlman from Man Called Sun, to Mark Gardner, to Sarah Jane, who I'd eventually go on to play drums with, and also supported both myself and Andy during our gigs and stuff, and still does. She heard my name mentioned like so many times and stuff, and I knew Shani years before like the radio show and stuff, and she said, all right, I'm all right, let me get in touch with this guy and see what he's all about. And it was for her single launch, I think, at George Lane in St Kilda. Only had 2 days to prepare for that one, and we hit it off pretty much instantly in the first rehearsal and stuff. Just needed the songs to listen to and just those 2 rehearsals, and we hit it off instantly. Like, Shani and I hit it off on a musical and personal level, and as did Axel, who is to this day still one of my greatest friends and stuff, and my partner in crime, one of my partners in crime, not literally. Being a phenomenal bass player and an amazing musician in person as well, and I have so much fun every time I play with those guys, and especially with Shani's kind of music in that very Missy Higgins, Paul Simon kind of atmosphere where it's attached to folk music, but she's also not afraid to go into different, like bringing in world music, whether it's something from like polka music to like jazz, all that, or like African music, or like Eastern European type of influences and stuff. So it's in areas that I'm familiar with, in like the folk and all that kind of folk music and all that kind of stuff, country atmosphere, but also challenges me into styles of music that I'm familiar with, but never really played that much in my life. So it definitely keeps you on your toes. So physically, literally, and figuratively, especially being a drummer. But it's always so much fun playing with Shani. I have a lot of fun playing with those guys. The musical journey is kind of like an ongoing one. It's very much a thing, as I've said, in that you're learning constantly. In this industry, it's important to sort of be in the middle when it comes to any sort of thing like that, in holding on to the traditions that we've established, in going to gigs, in talking to people and having that human connection, and at the same token, is adapting to the industry as it changes and using what's there to your advantage at the same time. And don't be afraid to use social media, don't be afraid to use technology, but still having the human mind there, or the human aspect to it there, and the creation aspect of it there as well, because we're humans, we're not robots. And it's like, I'm still on this journey and stuff, and especially like as a teacher and stuff, it's like we need to be there to help out the next generation and stuff, especially in an industry that is ever changing and stuff. And that's something I always keep in mind as a teacher, especially to students or to anybody that wants to take this seriously and stuff, in like, this is what you need for like what is awaiting you out there, not what is awaiting me, but what's awaiting you out there. A drummer's role is to keep time and to play for the song. And I do remember what Gavin Harrison said, that with timekeeping, yes, obviously, as they say, the drummer's role is to keep time, but really everyone else has to help keep the time as well. It's the drummer's role to make the time more interesting. The journey of music is like, this journey that I've been on as a musician and stuff has never always been a straight line, and nor should it be. And just like anything else, it's not always going to be a straight line, but you're going to end up having a lot of successes, but you're going to end up having a lot of failures down the track and stuff, and you end up learning the most from the mistakes that you make. The minute you stop making mistakes is when you stop learning. And to be part of this industry and everything, and to succeed in it, is like, it goes back to what I said earlier and stuff, which is, you need to know your craft. It's about networking. It's basically being in the middle when it comes to all those things. It's like holding on to the traditions that have been established in the past, like going to gigs, going to talk to other musicians, networking, having that human connection, and also using social media and technology to your advantage as well, adapting to an industry that is ever changing constantly. And the other thing as well on top of that is knowing your instrument, knowing your craft and stuff to the absolute best of your ability, and adding more strings to your bow effectively. Like, it's like, yeah, just because like you're great at playing one instrument doesn't mean you can't succeed at other sort of stuff. So add more strings to your bow, and that's something that I've always done, and I always use each experience that I've gone through as a learning experience, and to make me a much more well-rounded musician. And I think that's what everyone needs to have, wherever they are in their musical journey and stuff, whether it's someone who's been playing for 40 years to someone who just started their journey and stuff. It's like, be open to a lot of opportunities and things. And also, the old expression where it goes, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I disagree with that. It's what you know and who you know. meaning you have to know your instrument back to front. You know how to play it, you know how to tune it, you know all that kind of stuff. And also it's who you know as well. It's talking to the right people that will be there, that you can trust, that will never let you down, and that will be there to back you up in the same way that you'll be there to back them up as well. It's Communication is like a two-way street, or trust is like a two-way street. And the other thing as well that goes back to what Todd Suckerman was saying, in that the music business is a people business, and people want to work with their friends. If you don't know how to, if you're someone that no one wants to listen to, it's not going to matter. But if you're someone that no one wants to hang around with, your talent isn't going to matter either. Be humble and be real. So get out there and you just get out there and make friends. But know your craft and be a nice, kind, humble human being. And as I said, the business is a people business, and people want to work with their friends. So get out there and make friends. You can never know too many cool people, can you? And doing all that kind of stuff, treating the music and the musicians with the respect that they deserve, practice hard, enjoy it, and most important of all, have fun with what you're doing, then great things will happen to you. Well, thank you very much. See you next time.